Good morning and welcome to Sunrise Daily. I'm Neota Egbe.
Good morning and welcome to the program. I'm Maukwe Ogun Yusuf. Can't believe it's midweek already.
You never can tell.
Yes, a chilly midweek at that, Maukwe. Good morning, Maukwe and Neota. Good morning to everyone. I am Bukola Koka.
Well, Bukola, it might be chilly for you in Lagos, but here in Abuja, it feels like an oven some days. The heat here is amazing. So your air conditioning is you're just wondering, come on, please now. Can someone just speed up this air conditioning? And oh boy.
We've been praying for the rains, huh?
Well, sometimes the rains come down, but you're wondering if it's just to cool the moment. You know, those days, like what there was a couple of days ago, rains just came just for a few minutes, just cool down the atmosphere for just like a few seconds, and then it was as if they turned on the heater again. But let's hope that it would change over time. Talking about things changing. And how things just is as though you turn on the situation and then you turn it off again and hope that okay, things will get better as we go on. It's this matter of the new government that's coming in May 29 and the things that they should be looking at. The North Central residents of the North Central region of Nigeria came together and were looking at okay, some of the things that were biting. As they say, you don't know which foot the shoe pinches on except you're wearing the shoe. You might see a pair of shoes and you think, okay, those shoes are really nice. I will buy that for Maukwe. And then you don't know. Maukwe wears it and tells you, he said, Maukwe, those shoes are nice. And then she goes, yeah, but the left foot hurts. But you're like, no, they're nice. They're nice. He said, no, but the left foot hurts. But the shoes are nice. Okay, they are nice, but the left foot hurts. Can you help to change it or expand it? And then the person who bought the shoes goes like, Nelta goes, no, I'm saying the shoes are nice. I bought them, I paid for them. That's what happens sometimes in leadership where the government says, okay, this is what I'm going to focus on. I've given you my manifesto during the campaigns. I'm going to focus on roads. I'm going to focus on this. I'm going to focus on health. I'm going to focus on that. But then the citizens have certain things that they will require of you, the governor. I do know that some states, some people have come up to say, this is what we're saying. This is our charter. The Middle Belt states have come up to say, this is our charter to you. If you're coming in as governor or in whichever capacity you're coming in at all levels, this is what we want for you to do for us, and we will vote for it. They did that during the campaigns. They all give them the charter, and now they're saying, okay, state governors, local government, at whatever level you're coming in, this is what we want. But would the government at all these levels listen to say this is what the citizens desire? Or would the incoming government be thinking, okay, this is what I want to do and this is how it will work? They're talking about education. That Ekiti State, for instance, Ekiti State University is shut because of registration fees. Which one would the government listen and do for the citizens? Not necessarily what you desire as someone occupying an office. Would you follow the desires of the citizens or would you be doing what you think that they want?
It's a very tough one. You know, it's a very tough one because I also know that oftentimes we do not want to always take the easy road. And sometimes, you know, the road less traveled might be the road that people might need to take sometimes. If it's not a road that is familiar, people might not be willing to do it. But I think that what needs to happen is that for a leader to say, I want to take the road less traveled because I believe that this is the path that can lead us to prosperity, he must be seen, he or she, but in this case, they mostly will be his, because there was no woman elected as the governor.
Well, not yet.
But
We're still waiting for that.
We're still waiting for that day. But in this case, if we're speaking specifically about governors, it has the pronoun here is a he. He must be seen to have earned the people's trust in little things. So you must be able to show that their interest is paramount in your heart, and it has to be from the little things. You cannot just, for you to just tell even children of nowadays, follow me. You must have earned their trust over time. And that's when they will be able to say, well, if over time you've been able to do this and do this and do this for us, then perhaps we think that we might be able to follow your vision even though we cannot see the end yet. We should be able to say this is perhaps where it is that you're leading us to. So I do not think that their paths necessarily need to be divergent. I do not think that citizens will always want a separate thing different from what their leaders will want. I want to imagine that anybody who was elected duly so would want the best, will have the best interest of the people at heart. And if that is the situation, then they must always find grounds for common interest. But as you said, there will be instances where it's like a child refusing to take medicine, but that medicine is good. Nowadays, it's food. Different classes. Oh boy. I find now that I have to be giving lectures on why certain classes of foods are important and not just, other types of food. So I'm hoping that that leaders will calm down, understand what the work at hand is, see where it is that they can, earn the trust of the people, where their interests largely converge, work largely on that, earn their trust to be able to demand of them, certain other things that they know in the long run will be for the good of the people, but might not exactly be embraced by them initially. Those kinds of scenarios will certainly arise. So let us see what eventually happens. But I'm happy that this sort of conversations are happening, that people are not just waiting for governors to get into office and just do as they please, and they're beginning to tell them, this is what we would like you to do. So let us see how it is that citizens themselves, will be willing to work with their leaders to see how it is that they can indeed make progress possible.
Indeed.
Buki.
Yes, Mark, but I'd like to believe that the leaders had earned the trust of the people. That's how they got elected in the first place. The electorate chose a certain class of leaders, made some choices over the others, so they have earned that trust. Now, the most important thing is that they do not break that trust in the course of the next 4 years, when they roll up their sleeves and get to work. We started off by talking about the variations in weather patterns in Lagos and Abuja, but one thing that is constant is the harsh weather conditions as far as policies are concerned, and the delivery of the dividends of democracy to the people. And that's why Nigerians went to the polls, a few weeks back with a huge dose of trust. Now, what's going to happen in the next 4 years? I'm on all fours with you, Maokwe and Nyota, as far as, the conversation is concerned. So what are the demands of the people? We started off with the North Central. You may not even have to sit down with citizens, our brothers and sisters in the North Central, for you to know what their needs are. There are huge challenges in the North Central as far as security is concerned. That region of the country is supposed to be the food basket of the nation. How far, how well has the government of the day harnessed the resources of that region to empower the region to feed the nation? Can that region feed the nation? What's the proportion of, agricultural produce coming from that part of the country as against what Nigeria is currently importing? We can, mention so many of the food crops, that Nigeria is supposed to be known for as far as production is concerned. We can also, look at other parts of the country and talk about what their needs are. So the conversation has started. Are the governors-elect and the House of Assembly members-elect listening to the people as far as their demands are concerned? So we all must, ensure that we do our part, to ensure accountability as we begin, the journey into the next 4 years, and ensure that indeed we do our part, and the elected representatives as well do their part, to make good their promises. But they must first of all understand the needs of the people and prioritize, the needs of the people above and beyond their own motivations for getting into government, first of all. And, we hope that the pattern of our conversation after the next 4 years will be different from what it is currently now. Nyota. Amakwe.
Indeed, Bukola, as divergent as the needs of the people are, there's something that would tend to bring it all together, and that would be communication. How are you communicating your plans for the people? The truth is this, Marco, as much as we say we have been doing this, some might say they've been talking to the people, they've been communicating with the people. It might not work out the way you think it is. It might not work out the way it used to be. You might need to vary your communication partners. As they say, until the other person on the other side understands what you're saying or what you're selling to them, they will not buy or they will not follow you. So you need to, I mean, you talked about children these days, you tell them, do this, eat this, eat food, and they'll ask you, why? so you have to learn avenues.
If they say why, you're lucky. No. It's oftentimes the response, especially if they're toddlers.
I'm telling you. So you might need to vary your communication because of the people you want to lead. You came into that office, as Buki said, they voted for you. That means they trust you. So, but in telling them, selling to them what you want to do, you might need to vary your communication just so that they will understand and they will follow you. Well, Sunrise Daily will be back in a moment, and we'll look at what the dailies are saying. Don't go away.
The Vanguard newspapers kickstarts our look at the dailies this morning for you. And what do they have on the front page? They're looking at the battle for, or let's say the race for the Senate presidency. Look at that. Senate presidency, APC looks to South-South, shops for Northwest deputy. Okay, so they're still staying on the story for you. Senators Godswill Akpabio, Jibrin Barao favored. Tinubu has final say on choices for the posts, says source. Adds party still making consultations. So page 8 is where you'll find details. Look at that. Akpabio very much in the race. That's according to a group. You'll see the pictures right there of the two hopefuls. You also see presidential poll, why we didn't declare Atiku winner, INEC tells court. Page 35 is where you'll find details on the front page this morning. A number of other stories there. Illegal sale of crude. Malame received funds without remittance, reps allege. It's on page 9 of the paper. That's the Attorney General of the Federation. Pretty strong allegations leveled against him by whistleblower. You might want to see that story on page 9. Look at the top. Federal government Obi bicker over leaked audio conversation with Oyedepo. May 29, arrest advocate of interim government. That's according to Northern Elders. And why Plateau Assembly remains sealed. The police is giving their own side of the story. IMF sees decline in Nigeria's economic growth in 2024 to 3%. That is also there on the front page this morning. So a lot of stories on the economy and also politics. There's also an obituary here. Anambra's ex-governor Mbadinuju. Yeah, thank you. Dies at 78. May his soul rest in peace. We'll leave it there for Vanguard newspapers.
The Guardian newspaper is the next one, and they have this headline focused on the health sector. Doctors demand salary review before May 29. Yes, that's what they're saying. And you see that picture there, but the story continues on page 6. And see the writers. UK counterparts begin strike over pay. NARD wants payment reviewed payment of reviewed 2023 Medical Residency Training Fund. Admonishes reps on obnoxious bill sponsored by Johnson to summon NEC meeting in 2 weeks on next line of action. Below that's this one, a sports minister under fire over 21 billion naira request to fix National Stadium. The National Stadium in Lagos has been, well, somewhat like comatose, not in use, except for those who go there for early morning exercises, and is looking to do some work there. Check page 6 for details of that. And he says it will cost about 21 million. The ministry, rather, says it will cost 21 million. Burden of proof, much ado about Tinubu's assets on page 4. IMF retains Nigeria's economic growth projection at 3.2% as global inflation decelerates. Okay, that's on page 16. And that's it from The Guardian.
And from that, let's flip very quickly to this Nigeria. This Nigeria chooses to lead with something different, but just as interesting, which affects everyone. Where's $2.4 billion crude oil money? Take a look at the riders. Perhaps they would provide more insight. Reps invite finance minister, others over an accounted sale to Chinese. Whistleblowers reject lawmakers' probe of stolen 48 million barrels of oil. Details will be found on page 4 of this Nigerian newspaper. So, yeah, it's another dimension to, the big challenge of crude oil theft. Nigeria is yet to recover from, that big bust by a private security firm just towards the end of last year. And this is another. Perhaps they're all related. Where you find details on page 4 of this Nigerian newspaper. Away from that, let's go right to the bottom where you find this one. It's a follow-up on preparations and plans and permutations, as the case may be, to the National Assembly leadership elections. So it's captioned this way: 10th NASS leadership. Desperate aspirants may frustrate Tinubu's presidency. Not my words, but they're not ascribed here this morning. But you'll find details inside page 5. There's another interesting one right under that. Stop obeying sit-at-home order. IPOB warns Southeasterners. I believe that's it. S-Easterners for Southeasterners. So if IPOB is the one issuing this order, then what's the place and the purpose of the continued sit-at-home order in the southeastern region of the country? Perhaps it will form a talking point in the coming days so that we can all understand it better. And right under that one, there's more politics. Wike warns against manipulation of Kogi governorship primary delegates list. There's a lot of talk about that, and the primaries for the other off-cycle elections in Bayelsa, Ondo, and another that I can't immediately remember. But lastly, Obi's petition lacks merit, APC tells tribunal. Party explains why Tinubu forfeited $460,000 in U.S. alleged drug case. Let's leave it there for this Nigeria.
Well, leadership is the next one now, and their story also focuses largely on the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal. Look at that, 2023 presidential poll. Obi Labour Party have no case, INEC tells tribunal. Says reliefs sought by petitioners not grantable. President-elect duly elected. Tinubu APC wants petitions dismissed. Page 4 is where you find details. So, in case you're just curious about that story, please pick up a copy of Leadership newspapers and flip to page 4 to get more details. Ex-Anambra Governor, that story is also there. Mbadinuju dies at 78. Look at that. Apapa-led NWC screens Bayelsa, Kogi, Imo Labour Party governorship aspirants. Don't forget that these states will be seeing their elections very soon. That of Kogi, I believe, should be happening right up next. Then that of Bayelsa as well, because I think they have to have a new governor by February 14 next year. So Bayelsa, Kogi, and Imo right up next for the off-season elections. 2023 Hajj, NACON warns states against extortion of pilgrims. That is also there. Peak Milk apologizes to Christians over Good Friday advert. So that story is on page 8 of the paper. I think that, companies should be a bit more sensitive in terms of, scrutinizing adverts before they go out, especially adverts that go on to social media. I know that sometimes it doesn't look like there is sufficient scrutiny.
Some elements of faith are very sensitive and indeed shouldn't be toyed with.
Yeah, so I think that, I hope that they've learned their lesson and certainly will scrutinize adverts before, they have to apologize. Thankfully, this was all that happened. What if it had led to something else? Well, look at this. APC-PDP National Chairman, acting PDP National Chairman, acting PDP National Chairman irrelevant, says Wiki. You find details on page 6 of the paper. Let's leave it there for leadership newspapers.
And Daily Trust is the next one. Leaked audio. FG, ACF, others blast Obi as what they lead with the riders. Clear yourself, Ohaneze challenges LP candidate. It's a ploy to divert attention from Obi's petition. That's coming from our Afenifere leader. Iowa elders warn LP candidate against unguarded utterances. Our story continues on page 4. The reps finger Malami Ahmed others in $2.4 billion oil revenue scam. That story continues. It's on page 6. IMF urges CBN to continue raising interest rates. Page 19. There's some who will argue that one. Jai's Bank increases profit. And let's say this one, this quote just below the nameplate. For competence, cognitive experience, capacity, result-oriented, and 4th-term member of the National Assembly to deliver on the campaign, Whoa, is an advert. Well, that's it from Daily Trust newspaper.
And let's do a quick check on Nigerian News Direct this morning. Nigerian News Direct also leads with INEC's reply to, demands for the disqualification of the president-elect, and this is the way it is rendered. Tribunal, Tinubu's forfeiture of $460,000 to U.S. government, no ground for disqualification. Of course, that's ascribed to the party, but take a look at the riders. Says FBI gave President-elect clean bill in FG's inquiry, cleared him of criminal arrest records or warrants, IGP to be subpoenaed to tender clean bill letter in evidence, and tackles Obi, says his eligibility questioned, joined LP less than 30 days to primary. All of the details you find on page 3 of the Nigerian News Direct. Let's go above the nameplates. There are quite a number of stories that will interest you. This one is to the extreme left, and it's rendered this way. Ramadan, Senator Oluremi Tinubu calls for love, peaceful coexistence. And that's interesting. She's the wife of the president-elect, and she's a Christian. And just 2 days ago on Easter Monday, we were talking about the holidays coming, at the same time. The holy month of Ramadan, during which our Muslim brothers and sisters are observing their fast. Christians are also celebrating the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. So there's no better time than now for this call for peaceful coexistence. And then there's this one right after that one. It's a follow-up to, the crude oil theft story. Alleged 2.4 billion naira oil theft. Ministers, heads of MDAs snub reps summon. That's a page 2 read from the Nigerian News Direct, and it's another, account of the story on 2.4 billion naira oil theft. The other account talked about the summon of the finance minister. So now we have it that the members of the MDAs who should answer relevant questions snubbed the summon by members of the House of Reps. Of course, it's a developing story, and we'll get details in the coming days. This one is next, and that should be the last from the front page of News Direct. It's a sad one, actually. 500 level OAU student beaten to death by colleagues over phone theft. Security agents should look into this one and bring the perpetrators of this dastardly act to book. Very sad, and we hope and pray that this is the last, that will be heard about it from the OAU. And let's leave it there for the Nigerian News Direct. And that should about pretty much sum up our newspaper review segment. There's so much to unpack for you, starting from Abuja, and that will be after the break. Stay with us.
Like I've said, I will prefer a situation where we look at programs and policies that will benefit Nigerians generally. From my experience in the parliament, I've seen speaker being zoned to one zone or the other, and you can ask those zones what they have benefited from such exercise. But what is important will have been programs that Nigerians will benefit from, irrespective of where they come from, rather than talking about sacrificing merit on the altar of zones. At the end of the day, you don't get anything out of it. Just like you observe, you may be compensating people personally with their personal gains and all that. But when it comes to society benefiting from a government, I think it is better to put people to consider competence, capacity, experience, and people who can deliver the job. And when you put in place good programs that Nigerians benefit from, let me give you an example. Look at the social investment program of President Muhammadu Buhari. It's a very fine, beautiful program that Nigerians would have benefited from, but it was not implemented properly. There was no law, there was no rule of engagement, there was no law guiding it. It's one of the best. It's one of the best programs that the government actually brought on board, where Nigerians, the poor people, the underprivileged Nigerians will benefit from. But look at the implementation; it was not properly handled. There was no rules of engagement. So policies and programs of government is what we should focus on, and who can deliver the job, rather than looking at where Mr. ABC comes from.
And that's where we're starting from the leadership of the 10th National Assembly. For now, horse trading and political positioning is going on. Who's going to carry what? Who's going to lead where? Who's going to bail the cat? That's a question that a lot of people are asking. Some have said this region, that region, this faith, that faith. someone says, it really doesn't count which region or which faith. The most important thing is who will be the 20th president of the Senate, as in the Senate, and who's going to be the 20th Speaker of the House of Representatives, if we want to go by the numbers. So let's get into this conversation. And here with us in the Abuja studio is Dr. Ajibola Bashiru, who's the senator representing Osun Central Senatorial District. He's of the APC, and thank you for joining us.
Yeah, good morning.
He also happens to be a lawyer and the current spokesperson of the Senate. Again, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Also joining us from our studio in Borno, virtually, is Mohammed Abaji, Senator of Borno Central Senatorial District. He's yet to come into that space. We'll bring him in as soon as he does. But Dr. Bashiru, so 19 Senate presidents have gone from 1960, Nnamdi Azikiwe, and currently Ahmed Ibrahim Lawan, Senate President of the Senate, rather. In all of this, what do you think, in your opinion, determined who became president all of this? Because if I do remember correctly, I think there are those who argue that Nwafo Rizu, 1963 to 1966, was the only person that came into that position by the constitutional procedure and in some asset. I said some asset. But let's get it. What do you think? Who should be, or how can that come out?
As far as I'm concerned, the leadership of the National Assembly, like any other political position, is political. And political consideration will ultimately trump any other argument that anybody canvass as to who will ultimately be there. And you'll also discover that historically, even when political parties have preference for certain candidates, political ostrading, political maneuvering will ensure that even their political party will not have, the day. You will discover, when there's this issue about the Meji Bankole, Patricia Isse, and so on and so forth. So you see opposition party gang up against the ruling party, and they're able to produce, even though member of opposition of the ruling party, but those with a preference for the ruling party. You also will see the emergence of Senator Bukola Saraki at the ninth Senate, and of course Senate, and of course the fierce contest between Senator Ali Ndume and Ahmed Lawal at the 9th Senate. So ultimately, whatever argument people canvass, I've listened to just before the start program, my brother from Osun, Wole Oke, talking about competence, capacity, about benefit of the people. Those are just eye-sounding words that politicians use. And the Freepedo Pareto, a philosopher, said that when it comes to ideology, people will have come to conclusion you only be using for argument theologically to justify your position. The question you ask yourself is this: will somebody be a member of National Assembly and will not be competent to be a presiding officer at the National Assembly? The position of a presiding officer is that of primus inter pares, first among equals. Let me
bring it. You talked about would he be a member of the National Assembly and not be competent to be a presiding officer?
Yes.
The longest serving Senate president was Senator David Mark.
Yes.
All the others the highest spent at least 4 years rather. But he spent well over 2 or 3 tenures from 2007 to 2015.
That's 2 tenures.
2 tenures. Next to him was Senator Bukola Saraki, who spent 2015 to 2019. Competent in the area of management of your teammates, shouldn't that be considered?
Not necessarily. Politics, you see, it's not a technocrat work. The fact that you are competent does not mean that democratic system would not disfavor you. So it's not meritocracy. So if we even the best have the best intention, have capacity, have competence, but intrigue of politics can trump all those ideas of competence. So the question of argument about competence, first and foremost, for you to get elected to the National Assembly, I would say, if I may use the word, prima facie, show that you are a competent person and is somebody who has an authority from his own people elected to represent them. And what is the position of the Senate President or Speaker of the House of Representatives? Is that of first among equal. It means that any of the 109 senators and any of the 360 House of Rep member can be the presiding officer. So ultimately, and that is why you see different kind of arguments coming forward, some who think zoning will not be in their favor will say, no, forget zoning. Let us talk about competence. Some of them who felt that zoning will be in their favor, they will not say they are not competent, but will say, okay, we need to, look at it from the zonal perspective. So as far as I'm concerned, there are so many options for my party, ruling party, in making consideration. And that will ultimately be a decision to be taken. Either you want to take a decision based on political expediency, or you want to take a decision based on some other consideration that you think is germane to cohesiveness of the country and to diversity of our existence. Argument can be canvassed, for instance, that for now you have the president of the elect, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, from the southwest. You have the vice president from the northeast. That remains that there are 4 other zones, if you look at the 6 geopolitical zone, that can produce either the president of the Senate or the that of the speaker. And you see the 9th Senate. For instance, the president, Muhammadu Buhari, is from the northwest. The president of the Senate is from the northeast, and the vice president is from the southwest. The speaker, again, is also from the southwest. So it is not really a rigid game in terms of even zoning. It's not even a rigid game in terms of the argument of competence, but ultimately, the leadership of the party, as well as the members of the 10th Assembly, will have to look at so many variables. For instance, argument may be canvassed, which is the religious argument that, okay, the president is a Muslim, the vice president is a Muslim. Will it not be reasonable to have a Christian as the president of the Senate or the speaker of the House of Representatives? And you cannot wish away such argument, particularly when you see the divisive nature that politics has taken in recent times in Nigeria. You may also look at, can you wish away the northwest part of the country, which for our party has produced the bulk of the votes by which we won the presidency? Will you decountenance their contribution, particularly having regard to the fact that if you look at the election, the way the gubernatorial election has gone in the northwest, our party, APC, lost in Kano, which is a bulwark of a support for our party. We also lost in Savara. Will you not be talking of having a Senate president in terms of political expediency to have somebody who is strong and who could be a rallying point for our party in that regard? So, and of course, you also consider South-South as also a possible emerging zone that you may also be looking at in terms of now emerging as a strong contender and support for our political party. You can see that my party did very well, pretty much than what we used to do in the South-South. Then you may look at possible gladiators from the South-South to be able to do so. So the argument about who becomes president of Senate or speaker of the Senate is not just a thing that can be pigeonholed into saying competent, capacity, interest of people. There are a lot of political considerations that goes into taking such office.
Do they have to be mutually exclusive? This talk of competence, yes, you say that who is in the National Assembly that is not competent, yes. But we also know that, competence is in various fields. Dexterity at certain matters also varies. It comes with experience. It comes with what has been proven over time. The chances that people want to go for people that they have seen tested before and have succeeded at certain roles will be quite high. So do they have to be mutually exclusive? Can zoning and competence go hand in hand?
Of course, that's the argument I'm saying, that first we must not say that competence is just the only factor. And when you talk of competence, are you saying that in the Southwest, for instance, when you have senators like Senator Yayi Olamilekan, who has been in the House of Assembly, House of Rep, and who is a senator, is not competent, but you also discover that that's the same zone that the president of Nigeria will be? If the argument alone, I'm not decountenancing the argument of competence and capacity, but I'm saying that would not be the only factor that would determine who takes it. Otherwise, you have also Senator Fatai Buhari from Oyo, who is, a third-time senator, who had also been in the House of Representatives. He had been in the executive arm. So for each of the zones of this country, you have competent people, you have capable people, and you have people who can actually hold that office. So what I'm saying is that on top of competence and capacity argument is also political considerations and the question of balancing, which may be regional balancing, religious balancing, or political expediency.
How is your party handling the conversation right now? Is the party interested? Because it would seem that the candidate, the president-elect, who was the presidential candidate of a party, he said he's not looking in that direction. Whoever it is that the National Assembly throws up, he's been quoted as saying that. If that is the situation, is it the sole business of the party right now, or do you fear that the mistake that or the scenario we saw in the 8th Assembly could also pop up again in the 10th Assembly?
Of course, in the 8th Assembly, it's not as if the party did not take a position. The party actually had preference for Ahmed Lawal, but some other people in the party, felt that will not happen, and they decided to form alliance with, the opposition party. At that time, the balance in terms of demography are almost, equal each other. But when you look at the demography now, we have 57 as at the last count, or 59 senators from the House of from the APC. You have 29, I think, from the PDP. I think about 7, from the Labour party. So in terms of demography, our party definitely will not close its eyes to who eventually will emerge as the president of the Senate. Yes, the president-elect may decide to insulate himself from whatever controversy, because whatever happened at the end of the day, he will have to work with any of those that will emerge. So it's not politically expedient for Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu to go to town. I know Asiwaju is not somebody who run away from controversy when he was not the president-elect. At 8th Assembly, his preference was for Ahmed Lawal, notwithstanding that Senator Saraki won. In 9th Assembly, his preference was also for Ahmed Lawal, and he campaigned for him. And as somebody who had gone on here to campaign against the sitting governor of another political party, but now he's the president-elect, is a statesman, so he has to act statesmanly. But some of us who are still in the political arena, of course, the party will have to sit down and look at where the position will be zoned. I will tell you that ultimately, because for now we have about 8 persons jostling for that position as at the last count, it will mean that if we throw it open, then it's an election that is won by simple majority. So I believe that our party will ultimately take a position on the zoning, possibly after Ramadan, or at least certainly before June, when the 10th Assembly will be convoked. And some of the parameters will be looked at. Yes, question of ranking is also one of the relevant factors in leadership of the National Assembly. Our standing rules talks about ranking as a veritable means of taking such decision. But of course, when you also look at ranking, you discover that in the 10th Assembly, you have quite a number of ranking legislators from all the zones of the country. And some of them even have experience of having been in the House of Representatives. Then aside the issue of ranking, you also have mentioned the issue of competence and capacity. But ultimately, our party also need to look towards not only now, but even the future of the party. We don't want, for instance, to have a party that is insensitive to the diversity and heterogeneity of the Nigerian society. Some of those factors will definitely influence the leaders of our party in ultimately taking a decision as to where the pendulum will swing.
So as we speak right now, the zoning decision has not been taken.
You know, Albert Einstein, when he was asked about a relation between politics and physics, he said politics is tougher than physics. Politics is not an exact science. And I think you can see even from here, I've mentioned a lot of variables that will operate on the mind of our people. Issue of competence, capacity, ranking, religion issue, ethnicity, political expediency, and of course, loyalty to the party. You don't want a situation whereby you have a leadership of an assembly that will be at loggerhead with the executive arm. And you see, as far as some of us are concerned, the 9th Assembly has shown what can be achieved in terms of legislative and constitutional advancement when there is harmonious relationship between the executive and legislative arm. So I think we want to build on that harmonious relationship, and that will influence who eventually have that kind of temperament to be able to lead the 10th Assembly towards that harmonious relationship between the executive and legislative arm of government.
What do we then make of these headlines? And in presidency, APC looks to South-South, shops for Northwest deputy.
Well, you know, politics, media, there are so many factors. Who is APC, for instance? We have different organs in APC. I saw the headline. I've not had the opportunity of reading what is the alter ego of APC. You know, when you have APC, I'm talking about my knowledge as a lawyer, like you talk about your television, our Channels Television. This Channels Television takes a decision. The question is, who are the alter ego of Channels Television? In our party, you have the National Working Committee, you have, the National Executive Council, you also have, the convention. Which arm of our party that can say authoritatively speaking for APC has made that particular statement? But of course, in political context, anybody may be able to push some story and get an headline to be able to do so. I'm not aware, for instance, that the NWC of our party has taken a position on the issue of zoning and where the zoning will be done. I'm not aware a NEC of our party, which is even superior organ, of the party, has also taken that decision. But of course, party leaders will be thinking, they will be making a lot of permutations, and will also, be looking at what are the various, options available to us to ensure that we have a seamless, relationship between the executive and legislative arm to be able to catalyze, the ideas and the program of the renewed hope of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
Just one more. Can you confirm to us the statement, APC NWC, no Muslim should aspire for the position?
When you see,
this is credited to the NWC.
When did the NWC have a meeting? I'm not aware there's a meeting of NWC that take that position. When you read that, I'm very careful about
so you're asking us to take this with a pinch of salt.
Headline generation. You see, people craft headline. By the time you go to the nitty-gritty of the story, maybe a member of the NWC made that statement and it will be as if NWC. There must be a categorical statement by the NWC as a body, or the National Executive Council as a body before you take a position. I'm not fussy about whether it must be a Muslim, must be a Christian, must be zoned. I'm a party man. Wherever the party, zoned it. And some of the, gladiators at the 10th Assembly. And for instance, I heard Senator Barau Jubril saying, ultimately, at a forum, I think yesterday or the first day, I think 2 or 3 of them who spoke there said that ultimately they will abide by whatever decision of the party. So I'm not aware that NWC has taken a position or the National Executive Council has taken a position. But of course, people are free to seek to influence decision ultimately by generating editorials, generating reportorial, and also trying to get the public sway one way or the other. It's part of the art of politicking. Okay. Persuasion by other means.
You've talked about, I'm not going to mention the focus on competence and capacity, because you say that applies to every member of the Senate, because if you are in the Senate, then you have competence, you have capacity. But let's look at some of the people who are somewhat contending for this position. Kalu, Akpabio, Lawan. Lawan still has a chance, seeing that he's still a ranking senator.
And most ranking, it's most ranking.
And ranking is one of the criteria for getting to that position. The other thing is connectivity, the ability to connect amongst equal, the ability to connect amongst everybody here. So if you were asked to say, okay, which other criteria should be looked at? Leave the region and religion and the region of where the person's from to say, okay, this person or that person, without mentioning any names. Who is it that can lead this team to deliver policies? What kind of a person? Let's look at the person now. What kind of a person, no mention names, can lead that team to deliver programs and policies that will benefit the Nigerian?
A core party man who believes in the mandate of the party of Renewed Hope, which is the agenda of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. I think that's the way I put it.
A core party man.
Core party man.
Wow.
And when you say a core party man,
what if the opposition, like what happened under Senator Bukola Saraki, what happens if the opposition is able to woo some of your party members to form a coalition that will bring in somebody else?
It's only a failed general that get defeated by the same tactics twice and over again. I believe our party will have learned our lesson in 2015 and it will not happen again.
Okay, I think my colleague Bukola might have some questions. Buki.
Yes, thank you, Nyota. So, Senator Bashir, you've painstakingly talked a lot about political expediency. You've talked about the need for the party to be sensitive to diversity. So in line with that, I've heard some National Assembly members canvass that the party should go the way of the 1999 model. And when we recall the 1999 model, the president, like today, was from the Southwest, vice president was from the Northeast, Senate president, Southeast, and the speaker was, I believe, also was from the Northwest. So would you be advocating that your party adopts the 1999 model for balance?
I would not call 1999, what happened in 1999 as a model. It was just, what happened based on political, realities of that time. The same political reality may not be, in existence, today. Of course, there will be much argument in support of a Senate president from the Southeast and, of course, South-South. If you want to balance issue of diversity with issue of, regional, balancing, as well as issue of religion. Those three factors may sway argument in favor of not only the Southeast, but also, South-South. And we also have, quite competent and capable people from that, region. So I wouldn't say when it comes to, politics, there's no one-size-fits-all, answer to all the circumstances.
But in the spirit of fairness, don't you think that the Senate presidency slot should go to the Southeast? You know, especially with the agitation that because they've missed out on the presidency, they should naturally produce the Senate presidency slot. And in line with that, what do you think about the aspiration of Senator Orji Uzor-Kalu and Senator Osita Ozinasu?
You see, talking about fairness in context of politics, you also will have to face the reality that there was a democratic contest on February 25, 2023. In that democratic contest, the southeast part of the country, as a candidate from that place, Mr. Peter Obi from the Labour Party, and of course the overwhelming majority of the people in the southeast voted for Mr. Peter Obi. I think he grossed close to 87% on average of the vote from that region. So if eventually the Nigerian people decide to look the way of APC and Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu from Southwest, you could not in any way be saying that the Southeast has been surcharged and there has been unfairness to them because Senate president is not soon to their place. Because the argument could also go that South-South, which is also in certain part of the country and also predominantly having a Christian population, have also contributed a large number of votes to the emergence of our party at the national election. Then as to the question that you asked about my distinguished colleagues, Senator Orji Uzor-Kalu is presently our chief whip, and I will tell you that he has done a very good job at being the chief whip of the 9th Assembly. Is somebody who is cool-headed, and of course is somebody that is a good listener. And I will also say that from my knowledge of him is a thoroughbred party man. Even in the initial contest for the presidency, I'm aware that he initially pitched his tent with President Ahmed Lawal for the president's at the primary. But immediately, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu emerged. He devoted all his effort and ensuring that he worked for the party and the emergence of his candidate. Even though it was very difficult in the Southeast campaigning for our party because of the atmosphere of fear, intimidation, and of course, harassment of supporters of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu in that region. Senator Osita Isunazo, we are not together at the 9th Senate, but I think I've had cause to have relationship with him when he was a party official in the party. He's also quite a gentleman, but I will say that because you take decisions based on close relationship. So if I'm an employer, I would rather look at who have I worked with before, who have I shared experience at the same chamber. So I will say that I've had a very robust experience and the relationship with Senator Orji Uzor-Kalu. But that is not to say that that is my preference. I'm open to whoever a party decides, and of course, like every other party man, will support whoever the party decide to support for the election.
I'm wondering if you're really open or you'd rather not disclose who you're choosing to support, because I know that you've mentioned two names prior to this time. You mentioned Senator Fatai Buhari, you also mentioned Senator Olamilekan, and you talked about how Senator Olamilekan is also a ranking senator and deserving of the seat. So is that where you would rather align with? And are you uncannily giving us an insight into where the party may head towards in deciding the Senate presidency slots? Because in the 8th Assembly, or rather the 9th Assembly, the party did not particularly go the way of, zoning, if we consider the emergence of the Speaker of the 9th Assembly.
Bukola, I'm not always somebody who is running away from controversy. If I'm strong about my opinion, I would definitely, say it. But I'm saying that it is too early in the day, to take a definitive position as to preference for any particular, candidate. For now, we are still at the period of searching, and we also have to, cast our net, very wide, and ensure that all variables in the political decision is made available, not only to the public, but to our leader. The argument why I mentioned Senator Fatai Buhari and, of course, Senator Olamilekan is because of the argument that we are doing. They call it, in law, we call it assuming arguendo, assuming without conceding that issue of competence is the overriding thing. I said that we have also competent and capable senators from the Southwest, but of course it will sound, very untoward for the president of Nigeria, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, president-elect, to come from the Southwest, and for us to also pick the president of the Senate, from the Southwest, if we want to have respect for the diversity and heterogeneity of the Nigerian society. So the fact I mentioned them is to buttress my point that competence and capacity is not just, the only, factor. Some other factors may trump competence and capacity, while not also derogating from the fact that in leadership of the 10th Assembly, we need a man or a woman, as the case may be, of character, competence, capacity, but able to be a bridge builder and ensure that diversity of our country is respected in that regard.
Of these names, Senator Bashir, who do you think, would secure the highest number of votes if the members of the National Assembly, the Senate now, were to go to the polls today?
I don't know. I'm not a member of the... I'm not going to the 10th Assembly. I lost my election, so I'm only going back to my law practice and do some other things. So I will not know the faces, because the number of persons that return to the 10th Assembly from 9th Assembly, I don't think we're up to 30. So I wouldn't be able to know what will be the thinking of the majority. So I don't have power of clairvoyance. I'm still learning to be able to have a discerning mind, to be able to know what people are thinking. But ultimately, I know majority of our party members in the APC will respect ultimately whatever decision the party leadership takes in ensuring that we have a leadership not only for the 9th, for the 10th Assembly, but a leadership that really work and have an assembly that work for Nigerian people.
Well, I know that you worked with Senator Ali Ndume, you worked with Senator Ojiuzo Kalu, and quite a number of others in the race. So if you're shying away from that question, I understand. But the wide consultation that is ongoing, does it perhaps have anything to do with the variety in the opposition that is headed into the 10th Assembly? And do you think that the numbers of the opposition would have a lot to do, with who emerges the Senate President and other key leadership positions in the National Assembly for the 10th Assembly?
I think that would depend on how our party decide to get our acts together and have cohesion ultimately in being able to get what will want to be leadership. As far as I'm concerned, it will be in the best interest of our party to zone the offices so that we can narrow the number of contestants, because when you have 8 persons from a single political party contesting, it creates a problem for us in having a cohesive force going into the election. So ultimately, I see a situation whereby our party will ultimately take decision as to the zone that those, offices, will go to, then in that regard, we'll be ready to, have a contest with anybody in the opposition group that want to contest either for, Senate position and, of course, speakership position. I'm aware that in the House of Rep, a group of opposition parliamentarians have started grouping themselves and saying that they want the speakership to come, from their position. Presently, if party position is told, we have the majority for the emergence of speakership and, of course, of the presidency of the Senate.
Relating to that question is this one. There's a lot of talk from members of this 10th Assembly, reps-elect and senators-elect, about emotional blackmail and bickering. And considering the number of new members who have been elected for this 10th Assembly, how fragile is the independence of the 10th Assembly after the elections?
I don't see anything about being fragile about the 9th Assembly. We have 109 senators.
10th Assembly now.
At the last count, I think 57 or 59 members of the APC. I think that's a sufficient majority. Most of the businesses at the National Assembly are carried by simple majority, except in the context of amendment of Constitution, whereby you require 2/3 in certain cases and 4/5 in certain cases. So in terms of ordinary business of the National Assembly, I think the ruling party, the APC, has sufficient number both in the Senate and the House of Representatives to be able to have their way in almost virtually all issues of to be passed at the Assembly.
Just before I hand it over to Abuja now, how much weight should we attach to the position of the president-elect that he would have no influence whatsoever on who emerges Senate president and, of course, other key leadership positions in the National Assembly? Should we take it at face value, or should we be scrutinizing that a bit more?
I think, Bukola, I don't know whether somebody has sent you to send me away from our party. You are asking me to second-guess my leader, my mentor and benefactor on the national television. Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu is not somebody who will shy away from controversy if he needs, to get into that controversy. So if he has said that, I think every Nigerian should believe he has said that. But that does not mean that our party, as a party, will not be interested in who eventually will emerge as the leadership of the 10th Assembly.
Okay, so let me come in here, because there's also now, I think that's trailing very much off the back of what my colleague was asking, especially in the House of Representatives, meetings amongst members of the opposition parties, that perhaps they could produce a leader for for that coveted seat of speaker. Do you think it's a scenario that is workable?
You see, in politics, you cannot write off any permutation. You cannot write off any force. But it's good that they have shown their hands early enough, and I think that will make our party also to sit tight and they work along the way of ensuring that we have leadership of the House of Representatives in our party. And of course, when you look at many of the gladiators that are there, with respect to many of them, it's like a contest whereby 7 or 8 people are leading a group of people, and all the 7 also is looking for the same thing. At the end of the day, when the chips are down, the 7 people will walk their own way with the respective people that they have in their support.
That's the plan of your party, or that's
it's not our plan of party. I'm just looking at a scenario whereby you have almost about 7 people who want to be speaker, now say they want to form a coalition. At the end of the day, would they agree as to one of them that will hold that position? If they can agree, it's a possibility, but the possibility of them agreeing to the extent that they are driven by the same ambition will also make a coalition, that alliance, to fall flat even before we get to the contest.
But it's a possibility you're not dismissing.
You cannot, as a politician, dismiss any permutation. If you do so at the risk of failing in your own endeavor. So we will not dismiss them. We are taking them very serious, and I think my leaders are also taking them serious. But we believe that with the majority that we have, we should provide leadership for both the House of Representatives and the Senate in the 10th Assembly. So it's a challenge, and of course we'll watch closely, and we will be able to ensure that all that is necessary in terms of taking care of, interest of the members of our party along zonal and along religious lines and along, different, diversity represented by Nigeria is taken care in that regard. But we are not writing off anybody in that regard. And that's why you see, people coming up with different, arguments, and can see, my brother, Wole Oke, punching very hard on the issue of zoning, as if at some point in his own political career, he has also, on capacity, as if at some point in his own political career, he has also not benefited, from zoning of positions, even at the National Assembly.
Well, I'm just a little curious. What would you say will be illegal? While all of these candidates are going about looking for these different positions, or let's say aspirants, looking for these different positions, what will be illegal for them to do in pursuit of the ambition? Because the kinds of stories that we hear horse trading, we hear alliances, etc. But when you now start to hear stories of bribes, I'm looking for a better word, but
gratification.
Yes, dollar rain, for instance. These are the kinds of things that worry Nigerians in terms of what exactly is allowed, what should be frowned upon in leaders seeking the seats that they seek.
Of course, it is not only unethical. It is disturbing if the leadership of an exalted body like the Senate and House of Rep has to be bought. It portends danger for robustness of our democracy. But when it comes to horse trading and lobbying, of course it could be that, okay, you want my support for Senate President. Okay, I'm interested in a particular committee. I'm interested in a particular membership of a certain body, ECOWAS or something like that. That's because you're also looking for a position. That's I think that is within the area that I think is acceptable. But when it comes to actual purchase, if I may use that word, you may not want to use of people's mandate. I think that is dangerous for democracy, and that is why one of the areas that is the fourth line of even our democratic process, notwithstanding even the demonetization and the squeezing of naira, from circulation, even the 10th. The last general election is still fraught with incidents of food buying, which means that terrorists having large amount of money can even aspire to be positioned and get elected into that position. So both at the level of general election and at the level of electoral college like the National Assembly, we need to address issue of vote buying and issue of getting people to get to position by such kind of a motivation.
When we come back from this break, I'll be asking you if there's anything that we can do to really monitor it. Do you think that, this is something that there is sufficient political will to monitor? We understood that yesterday the EFCC, ICPC, and co say they had no comments on whether or not they were monitoring what was happening there. But I would also be asking if it's somewhere you think that those bodies should be monitoring even as this sort of conversations are ongoing. In just a moment, please stay with us. Dr. Ajibola Bashiru, who is a senator representing Osun Central Senatorial District, also of the APC, and the spokesperson of the Senate, is still with us here in our studios. And we're talking about the race for the presidency of the Senate as a 10th Senate of the National Assembly of Nigeria. Well, so, Senator, just before we went on break, we're talking about monitoring what exactly we count as horse trading and what exactly will count as, I don't want to say vote buying, I think you use another word, is it monetization? Gratification and purchase of the highly exalted seat of either President of the Senate or Speaker of the House of Representatives. So do you think that members of, not just members now, but the institutions of the ICPC, EFCC, even the police, do you think that this is a race that they too should be interested in?
Or that they should be interested because it borders on breach of criminal law of the country, and by their mandate they should. But if an inquiry is made to them and they say that they are not commenting, that would not mean that they are not doing what they're supposed to do. But you see, the problem we usually have in Nigeria is that you want to chase somebody and you already announce that you are chasing the person. The person will already be on alert. I remember on the day of my election, we alerted the police that there were incidents of people trying to snatch ballot box at Ward 9 in Osogbo local government. And when the police were coming, they were already blowing siren. So of course the culprits, they disappear. I mean, so you see, I don't think even if EFCC and ICPC are working, they don't need to put it in the media they are working. I think the results of their work that should speak for them. And that's why I was surprised when DSS came up with a press statement and said some people are organizing for interim government. One would expect is for those people to be arrested. Then it is the product of their work that will now speak whether there is really a genuine plot or otherwise, and those who are behind those things. So the law enforcement agents should rather work and ensure that they get results rather than announcing that they are working.
Maybe it's also a deterrence. You don't think so?
I wouldn't think so. But I think it speaks to the content and character of each and every member of the National Assembly to ensure that that office is respected and ensuring that people get freely elected to that particular position.
You know, talking about respecting the office, let's look at what the Constitution says about that office, the Senate, and how it should bring in its leaders, right? Section 50 talks about there shall be a president and a deputy president of the Senate. And just like there will be a speaker and a deputy speaker of the House, and they will be elected from amongst themselves, okay? Section 60 says, subject to the provision of the Constitution, the Senate or the House of Representatives shall have power to regulate its own procedure, including the procedure for summoning and recess of the House, okay? You're a lawyer, so you would help us walk this through. How does this tie into what the party says they should do, as in this is the person the party prefers, as against what the Constitution says about allowing them to choose amongst themselves? But the Constitution didn't say anything about party, majority or minority. They will choose amongst themselves, first amongst equals. So please,
the
connect the dots.
The party will not say that they should not elect among themselves. But we are in a party system. I don't know. Let me go back to what is even a political party. At least some of us who study government in secondary school. So that day I made this analogy. Somebody felt offended that I was saying that he did not study. I did not say he did not study government, but I just like, you know, I grew up in a local environment. I like to make analogy. What is a political party? A political party, government O level, is a group of people coming together, having ideas, program and policy that they want to implement it, and seeking power to be able to do so. That's what political party is. Today in Nigeria, we've made proposition for independent candidacy, but today we are running political party system. So a political party that has taken over power at the executive level, that also has majority in the National Assembly, in order to realize its policies, program and activities, must necessarily be interested in the leadership of the National Assembly. And that is why the role of the political party in emergence of leadership is. And that's what we call party whip. Even in our standing order, you see that provision of Section 60 is now translated to reality by what we call the standing order of the Senate and the standing order of the House of Rep. In the standing order, there's what the position of whip is there. What position whip is that when a decision is to be taken, you are expected to toe party line. And that's why there are also caucuses. There is the state caucus, there is the party caucus within the state, the regional caucus, and the national caucus of every political party. So it's at that level that we'll be able to aggregate idea and opinion and to be able to do so. So that does not negate the position of the party, of the constitution. The constitution ultimately will be respected because there will be a ballot. And the ballot will ensure that majority arise. But the party
there'll be a ballot of the general house.
General house.
Of the
general house. But before that time, the party would have been able to aggregate the views of the member and say, okay, party A, this is where we are going. Party B, this is where we are going. So if you are a party man and nobody gets to that office as an event candidate, you have to also, respect, your party. And that's why I have to go back to government O level. You want to, for instance, we are now going to continue in government beyond May 29.
But you see,
and we need a legislative arm that is able to realize the manifesto of our president-elect.
The argument.
So you need a leadership that's also, in tandem with that aspiration and program and policies.
The argument here would be that when you finish the contest, you've come into the Senate. It is the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Yes.
It is not the Senate of a party.
Yes.
It is not the Senate of... It's just that individuals, you're representing Osun, it's a constituency in Osun State, just like others are representing certain constituencies in different states. So it's the Senate of the Federal Republic. And you're allowed to vote amongst yourself to pick a leader. So when the people decide to vote, for instance, let's just say, for want of a better example, you're returning. And let's say you're from a different party. Let's say MO party. If there's no MO party in our nation, but you're MO party and you're returning, and everybody feels that you are the most competent in terms of connecting with the 109 of us, or the 108 of us. You are the most competent in terms of moving all of us to serving our constituencies. You are the most competent, but the majority members are in a certain party. They say A2 party.
And they don't have anybody that is also competent.
And they may have, but everybody feels like this one is more competent. Can that person fly?
If they feel, you see, everywhere in the world, even where we get this our democracy from, it's not from here. Even in the United States of America, the party that has majority in the Congress will produce the leadership at the Congress.
Will, not must.
Yes, will, of course. It's not a must. It's not a must, but will. In the where the parliamentary system is even the greater expression of it. The party that has the majority in the parliament will produce even the prime minister. Because there's a fusion of the executive and legislative arm. So you cannot divorce party politics and partisanship from democratic governance. That is the reality. So it is easier, maybe because you can talk this way because you are not a member of a political party. I'm a member of a political party. My party is APC. My party, by the will of the Nigerian people, we have emerged as the new government of Nigeria. We have programs we want to implement. We don't want an opposition parliament that will be throwing darts into the progress of the work we have done. And of course, you cannot remove partisanship from even the work of the National Assembly. And that's why when I'm being introduced by Mokwe, he said that APC will still, yes, I'm a senator representative also Central, but APC will still be my political party. So within the National Assembly, we still have the APC caucus, we have the PDP caucus, then of course they will have their Labour Party, caucus. But at the end of the day, when it comes to taking decision for the benefit of the country, we'll aggregate our view and take decision in that regard. But when it comes to leadership, you cannot play politics of dispassionate consideration when it comes to such sensitive office as the President of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Reps.
Let's step out of that space and look at the country in general. How would you describe the conduct of the last election?
The conduct of the last election is largely an improvement on the previous election in many respects. And I think the fact that technology is recognized in certain measures in the Electoral Act help the credibility of that election. And yes, and when I say this, I say it with all sense of responsibility. I contested and I did not win. So the question of maybe somebody is a bitter loser is not there. I know there are some issues about suppression of votes, about violence in my constituency, but that is a problem that you may not be able to establish by way of evidence in terms of the local. But when it comes to the actual, conduct, the use of the beavers, ensure that genuine voters voted at the election. Then, of course, the results, were collated both manually and in terms of transfer of the result as recommended under Section 60 of Electoral Act. And when you also see the kind of figures that come out from states with very large figure before, I won't mention them, it's got that something dramatic has actually happened in the contest here. So at times when I see a lot of people saying the election was rigged, was manipulated, I don't look at it. So do you think that if election is responsibility of rigging an election, and I say it's anybody can say so, that Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu will contest as a president and he will lose election in Lagos State if he has a way that he can manipulate the election? I'm not saying he will manipulate it by himself, but he has followers and supporters who will feel as a matter of ego they want to do so. Do you think the president, Muhammadu Buhari, his candidate will not win in Katsina State, will not win in Katsina State and in Kaduna State, and of course in Kano State? So the election of 2023 is largely an improvement on the previous election and is reflective of the improvement we have made by passage of the 2022 Electoral Act. And going forward, I believe that we'll continue to improve in that regard.
But there are certain aspects that many would have thought would be brought in. You mentioned technology. It was as though we want to bring in technology, but let's just take it piecemeal. One would have thought that it would be a holistic insertion of technology into the electoral process.
It could not be. If you recollect, there was this hot debate at the National Assembly on whether results should be transmitted or transferred. I don't know whether you could recollect that time. I think I had the occasion of addressing that, in some of your program here, when even the Senate was scandalized by members of opposition, that's majority in the Senate, that we didn't want progress in Nigeria, we didn't want that. We had concerns about security of the network. We had concern about adequate coverage of the network. And so the initial formulation in Section 60 of the Electoral Act was that INEC should deploy to transmit results where there is adequate data coverage and when NCC so testify as to that regard. Of course, there were a lot of controversies in town, a lot of opinion writers, so the provision had to be amended. So what was eventually agreed is what is in Section 60, subsection 4 now. And what is in Section 60 is that after election might have been concluded, result must be announced, recorded on the form EC8A, physical form manually, then the copy of the results and number of accreditation will be transferred in a manner that may be specified by INEC. So the use of the word transmission was deliberately removed from Section 60 of the Electoral Act. Then going to Section 64, subsection 6, when there is a dispute as to at the level of collation, INEC is allowed to use results transferred from the polling unit to be able to resolve that controversy. So if there's no controversy, and the room for controversy is actually limited because every political party is expected to have agents at the polling units, and is expected to have agents at the collation center. And when you look at cases, Nigerian cases, and in terms of election is done, concluded, result of election is computed at the polling unit level. What is done at the ward collation, local government collation, state collation, are mere arithmetical computation. So every party should be able to have a copy of the form EC8A at the polling unit level, from which they can even do their own tabulation of results, which they will take to the next level of collation center. So some of the arguments about results not being on IRF, about a particular website not doing results, are just, for me, they are not arguments that are within the confine of Section 60 of Electoral Act. Electoral Act made it clear, result of election must be concluded, must be written and published at the polling unit level. So from the aggregation of that polling unit level, you know whether you have won or whether you have lost the election. You don't have to go to IRF or any website to be able to say that you won there or you do not win there. And that address problem of data security, which we are still battling in Nigeria.
But again, that portion of the lecture where you talked about the results, if there is no controversy, we saw that the National Coalition Center, some parties walked out. They had issues. And the Electoral Act says INEC can review 7 days after. INEC hasn't come out to say...
No, this is where you want to raise a review. Let me, the way election works for presidential election, you have election in over 176,000 polling units. You go to the ward. From the ward, there will be collation at the ward. At the local government, there will be collation. Then what at the state level, there will be collation. What is done at the National Collation Center is announcement of what has been collated at the state level. So if you have not raised your issues about collation at the ward level, you have not raised it at the local government level, you have not raised it at the state level, then at the national level, where what you are doing is just arithmetic computation of what comes from the 30 states and 36 states and the FCT, then you are not even working in line with what is provided in section 64 of the electoral act. And that is why, for instance, when the old issues were being raised, as at that time, all political parties, and I believe political parties who are serious about election will have their situation room. They would have known the result of that election based on computation of what the agents and would have told them emerged from the polling unit.
Well, I know that largely these issues are now before an election petition tribunal, but I don't know whether as a politician you feel a bit scandalized now that eventually when the IRF eventually came up, the fact that in some polling units results were altered, or they seemed like they were altered because we saw generous use of TPEX on certain result sheets, people alleging that, the results have been changed at my polling unit. The results that have been put on the IRF platform were not what was taken at was not a true reflection of what happened in my polling unit. Do you, as a politician, are you concerned
I've not had cause. Let me tell you, in my own election, I look at the IRF as at a week after the election. Close to about 340 polling unit results had not been uploaded. But the truth is that I must be honest with myself. I have copies of the Form EC8A from all the polling units, 1,332 polling units in my constituency. And of course, I can arithmetically compute it and see whether it tallies with what happened at the ward and local government level. There's a difference between political sensationalization and the reality. The matter is before the court. If anybody feels that the results that has been given at the polling unit does not tally with what has been announced as the result, let them go to the tribunal. But let them not come.
No, what I'm saying is, I agree that, that's you as a politician. For many Nigerians who do not have polling unit agents, who, just took things in their own hands, took pictures of the results as, they normally would do, and then, we're told that, for transparency's sake, you'll be able to double check that on the IRF, this is what will be there. Are you a bit scandalized?
I'm not scandalized. I don't even believe such happened. Unless I see evidence. I'm a legal practitioner. I believe in real evidence. There's a difference between fiction and... So the question is that the figures, you see, at the level of collation, at the ward level, if there are issues about ballot accounting, there's what we call ballot accounting. On top of the Form 8A, they will write number of ballot paper issued, number of ballot paper used, number of spare ballot paper. At times, there are arithmetical computation, which does not affect the actual result of the election. Unless people come out and say that the vote for a party, which is 50, is reduced to 45, then it is then you are talking about manipulation of elections.
Dr. Bashir, I want to thank you so much for coming. But before we let you go, real quick, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the 9th Assembly?
10.
10 over 10?
Yes.
Wow. Dr. Bashir is the senator representing Osun Central Senatorial District, and he's a lawyer and spokesperson of the 9th Assembly. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, it's my joy being here.
Thank you. Sunrise will be back in a moment. Just stay with us.
Yes, you're still on to Sunrise Daily on Channels Television. We've been looking at the leadership of the 10th Assembly, the projections, the permutations, and, the agenda for the 10th Assembly. Now we're making progress with, in the same breath, with the same conversation, as we welcome Dr. Taiwo Ojo, who is the Strategic Leadership Consultant and CEO, Kish Global Consultants. Thank you very much, Mr. Ojo, for joining us on Sunrise Daily.
Good morning, Buki. Thank you for having me.
So as we begin the conversation, first of all, let's look at the 10th Assembly. I'm sure that you've been following a lot of the conversations, the zoning factor, the calls for competence, character, and of course the ranking principle of the National Assembly. Now, as you follow all of this, what are your thoughts? What do you think that the party, particularly the political party of the predominant members of the National Assembly, what should they be considering, in choosing the leaders of the 10th Assembly?
Thank you for that beautiful question. Once again, good morning, everyone. Politics in Nigeria looks like a war, but politics should not be a war. Politics should be something that drives the policy that will produce good governance and lift your people out of poverty. But the way we run our politics in Africa is quite different, because there is enormous power attached to that office, especially with the survival instinct that is common in our culture. So let me talk about the last election. Nigeria made a whole lot of progress. We hardly accept defeat. Even in the United States, Donald Trump did not accept defeat. So it's not only about our culture in Africa. It is the culture of every human being. We hardly accept defeat. Everybody wants to go into a battle and win. That is what Machiavelli said. You enter the battle and you win. But I don't want to engage in those social media, all our young people, because most of them do not understand history about elections. Looking back from 1999 to date, 2023 election is still the best. The only mistake I wouldn't know, was the direct transmission of the result. But Beavers is the joker. So what do we do as a people? Because we have to be involved. That's what we call civic engagement. Everybody must be involved, because politics is a big business. Your economy, everything you do is affected by policy, by politics. So who do you vote into that position of authority to represent your interests matters a lot. So like I said, Nigeria is making progress, and I want to appreciate INEC. Though everybody is castigating them, but there was a lot of improvement, especially with the introduction of technology and also the involvement of youth. Now everybody knows now. If you ask all those politicians, they know now that if I don't do well, I'll be kicked out. So as we go into the 10th National Assembly, the incoming government, that I know people are going to court, which is a civil case, is good. Let us focus on our nation, national development. What do we want to do? What is our leadership and governance? What is the policy direction of the administrator? And one thing I want to recommend for the new government is what I call decisive leadership. Decisive leadership. If I want to mention a leader that demonstrated that thing in Nigeria from 1998, President Obasanjo demonstrated it. Governor Babatunde Raji Fashola demonstrated it. Decisive leadership is for you to have the courage, despite the threat and the ethnic prejudice, bias, stereotype that has held our country abandoned for years. Take decisions that will be in the interest of the country. Nigeria is bleeding. In the last 8 years, we have been bleeding because of the lack of decisive leadership. So we need to remove that lens of nepotism and put emphasis on competence. Everyone is competent in all zones in Nigeria. But the problem I have in Nigeria as a strategic leadership expert, not only in Nigeria, across Africa and across the black world, is the merit issue, which is a big deal that we must look in towards, we must address now.
Well, Dr. Ojo, my colleague asked a question earlier on, as a follow-up to, the similar commentary that you're making now about the need for competence. She asked if those issues are mutually exclusive, and to ask it in a different way. Some would say there's competence everywhere. There's competence in all regions and religions. So shouldn't the decisions, be reflecting the diversity of Nigeria as represented in the National Assembly when those decisions, when those consultations are being made, at the party level and with members-elect who will also be deciding who leads them?
Okay, thank you for that good question. I know people talk about competence, capacity, etc., but politics will thrive competence. One thing I always want to encourage people in politics is to balance power. Balance the tribe, the religion. We know religion is a big baby in the room. We are not making progress because of our emphasis on religion. But you don't use religion to give good leadership. If you go to the Middle East, they are Muslim. If you go to China, they don't even have religion. Some, they practice Mao, but they are lifting their people out of poverty. So one thing I want to do, because of the national cohesion, because of the warmongers, if you go to Twitter, social media nowadays, it's abuse everywhere. We must move past that level and come to that level of how do we build our country from the level that we have found ourselves. So they must balance the national cohesion, especially for the president-elect that we've known, that we follow for years. He's a strategist and he dialogues, he reaches out to people. So I believe they will do the right thing as we pray along with them. Because it's one thing for you to want to do the right thing. It's one thing for you to surround yourself with your people that won't tell you the truth. There's so many people now that are looking for positions and they have no good motive to solve problems. They only see position as a means of survival to livelihood, which is not supposed to be why you want to go to leadership position. You must want to go to leadership position to serve your people and solve problems. While you are serving your people, your needs will be met. But like I said, in Africa, we must balance national cohesion, reconciliation, security, because if there is no security, you might not be able to rule well. People are not happy. Everybody is angry in Nigeria. Even if you go out, you see the way people drive, our attitudinal behaviors, our issues as a people is really nothing to write home about. You are adding anger with hunger. And so many things because of the economic issues and the pains that people have been exposed to years back. We must look at the national cohesion. How do we bring everybody to the table? And one thing I want to tell you about a tribe in Nigeria is this. They are very fair. Look at President Obasanjo government. Fair. I'm not supporting any candidates. I'm a leadership expert, so I work for the good of the country. Anyone that is there, we work for the national good. The southern people, they are fairer because they want to balance the system because of the high level of education. And I believe that is what we should expect with the new incoming government.
And perhaps that's where the independence of the National Assembly will come to play. And as a result, some of the permutations are to the effect that if the party now decides to zone to a particular region that they believe is deserving, then those who are in pursuit of their ambition, citing the ranking principle, will go to the floor to test their popularity, to test the outcome of the elections. Are we about to witness, if that will be the case, are we about to witness a repeat of events of the 8th National Assembly?
As a strategic expert, I believe that one can never happen. Leadership is very, very key. The president is very, very key. The type of person that we know the president-elect for, that issue will never happen. I know people are desperate for positions, but party supremacy is key. You use the party to win an election. So because of the national question that I've been speaking about, they will zone. When they zone, if they zone a position to your region, you vie for it. Because if actually you want to serve, you don't need to be desperate. Because when you are desperate for position, you won't do well. You won't do well. The president-elect is from the southwest. The vice president-elect is from the northeast. So 4 zones remaining. So they must share those 4 positions among those 4 zones. And also consider the religious balance, because people always say Muslim, but you know, most people from the southwest, they do not really pay emphasis on religion because of our nation. But let me speak for a general Nigeria, people in the north, central, and etc. They should balance so that people can have a sense of belonging. I know there are so many new members in the National Assembly. So rebels might come. People might want to take position and cause issue. But one thing I know, and I'm advising the incoming administration, is discipline. You must be in charge. You must be in charge, because I remember 1999, there was a problem in the Senate. Evanewere, Chuba Kadigo, Payosayin. In 2015, the same problem, Tabua and etc. In 2011 and 2015, the same problem, Bukola Saraki and Dogara. They balanced, but because they fought, and you notice that there was no peace all through the time of that 8th National Assembly. But one thing I want to say is this: we don't need a rubber stamp legislation. What we need is legislation that will create policies and programs that will be in the interest of the collective good of Nigerians. That is what we should focus on. What is the competence level of the person coming? What is your plan? What is your strategic agenda? What you want to achieve in the next 4 years? Don't let us put goals in 10, 15 years. It's not common with our people in Africa. Let us focus on the 4, 8 years. What are those policy decisions that you want to make that will be in the good interest of the collective good of the people?
Okay. I'm sure that my colleagues in Abuja have, questions in that breath for you, what those decisions should be. But before I now take it to them, if I caught your drift earlier on, you sort of advocated that the Senate presidency should go to the South. So for the House of Representatives speakership positions, there are calls for it to go to the Northwest, but there are also aspirants who are from the North Central. So clarify your position for the Senate presidency position, and where do you think the speakership should go to?
This is a personal opinion, not my strategic work. It's a personal opinion, so it might be an expo for the incoming government, but if I want to tell them, because we work in future, we work based on what will come in 5, 10 years time. So if I want to tell them how those 4 positions will be shared, the Senate president must come from the South. Not that I don't want Southeast, but if they choose Southeast, there might be issue with the tribunal, because you don't want to go back to the Evanewere, Chuba Kadigo's issue, especially now that the country is divided. Normally, I could have wanted the Southeast, but let us take it to the South to balance. You now take the speakership to the North Central, maybe from Benue or Plateau, because North Central, they have never become a speaker. You take the deputy senate president to the Northwest, get a senator from Kano, calm him down, and the deputy senate president, the deputy speaker, maybe from the Southeast. I think everything will be settled. There's so many positions that are coming up, and everybody will be represented. Like I said, you must go to equity, diversity, and make sure that there's so many women and youths in the new government. Don't let us see the same old faces, former governors. All those things does not give someone credibility. You can put them, let them go and do ambassador and go and be sleeping. But for real policy decision, get young people, women, young technocrats. Nigeria is dying. We have so many people in the diaspora doing well. Cut them. Let them come and help our country. No matter the passport that we have, Nigeria is our country. No matter the passport that you hold, you are a second, you are a third, you are a fourth, you are a 5th class citizen there, including your children. So let us build our country now. The patriotism is lacking, and I know the reason. The leadership has been at Mewa for years. So we need to balance those powers. So like I said, Speaker, North Central, Senate President, South, Deputy Senate President, Northwest, and Deputy Speaker, Southeast. Everybody is in the room. You now reach out and make sure that there's reconciliation, and let us first have a country to rule on. All this brigades fighting is not helping anybody. I travel a lot and I see the way people talk everywhere about their country. I marvel. We are in this Africa. We are living and we are doing what we are supposed to do to bring goodness to our country. But people, the word that comes out of their mouth is not too good, even enlightening people. So we need to have that belief in our nation.
Dr. Joe, thank you so much. Thank you so much. You are a strategic leadership consultant. So let's see, how do you think the 10th Assembly, what should the 10th Assembly be doing in a way to help the next government, the new government, in the area of vision building and sharing and communication with the citizens? Because there are some who argue that Nigeria is where it is. The citizens are losing patriotism because there is no central vision built in. Attention is not paid to the national anthem and the pledge, which are supposed to be like a central vision for the country. So how do you think the National Assembly, what should they be doing to help the new government get to pushing out that vision and communicating it effectively?
Thank you, Nelta. You know, in one of those documents that I worked on national orientation strategic policy document, which is done for just 4 years, I listed 4 key priority areas that anyone that will do well in governance must focus on. Number 1, the leadership and governance that you spoke about. Number 2, peace and security. Number 3, behavioral change. Our attitude as a people of Nigeria. Our attitude as a people. And the last one, policy engagement. You know, back to your question about the National Assembly. You know, it's not to just occupy position as Senate President, Speaker, enjoying the perks of office that makes you a good leader. Look, let's go back to our First Republic. Look at our 3 core leaders then, Amadou Bello, Obafemi Awolowo, and Nnamdi Azikiwe. Why do we still talk about them today? Because they shape the policy direction of the country. Do we have policy direction now? Yes. But are we running towards the right policy direction? No, because of the lack of political will. You need a leadership that will create a vision. What do we want to do? You know, last week I was reading something in The Economist and I noticed Brazil, India, Russia, they were trying to get their own currency to tackle United States dollars and China. And I told someone, I said, that is policy direction. All those invisible things that you can hold with your hand, those things are why you are voted into leadership position. Look at the United Kingdom. Look at the people in the House of Commons and House of the Lords, especially House of Commons. They are competent. You know, they go back to their constituency. The bill that is sponsored is needed to solve the problem. But our problem is we just, you know, raise so many bills that does not add to the current problems that we have as a nation. So the 10th National Assembly, they have their work cut out for them. But one thing I love to say is elect a good leadership. And like I said, the president of the country matters in Nigeria. What goes on in the head of the president matters. You can't give that job to anybody, to a chief of staff or to a minister or to a secretary. The president matters. And our prayer is, let us get it right this time around. Leave policies will always come, like we refer to it as electocracy. Every 4 years, election does not solve problem. It's a policy that solves your problem. Policy and the program that you have. Yeah.
I think a lot of people will agree with you indeed that policy is key. What sort of policy do you think we should pursue now? Because a number of people agree that national cohesion should be priority for whatever government is coming in, and also even for the National Assembly. How do you think that can be pursued as a policy?
Thank you, Mark. You know, like I said earlier on to Bukola, I spoke about national cohesion and reconciliation. You know, Bishop Matipuka said the same thing. Professor Olenka said the same thing. But one word that I would love the new government to focus on is the decentralization. I don't want to call it restructuring because people have diverse meaning to it. How do you take the government back to the people? Decentralization. Reduce that power in the center. Because if they take you to that position in the center, you might misbehave. You might misbehave because the power of the president and the federal government is too much, and they have low capacity to demonstrate that they can perform. So decentralize those things. We see how the 2014 confer. Can you bring it to bear? Your first 3 months in the office, make those things happen. Power, railway, airport, take those things down to the people. Education, health, so that people can see that things are moving. All these things are not rocket science. Even in China, that you always say they are dictatorship, they are blah blah blah. They don't practice democracy. They are lifting their people out of poverty. The lives of their people are being improved upon every day. So what are we doing to the life of our people in Nigeria when you are elected to leadership position? And secondly, I want our people to focus more on the states, subnational. There are so many states in Nigeria that are not doing anything. The state must perform for the federal to complement what they are doing. 70% of Nigerian states are dormant. They are not doing anything. They just go to Abuja, collect money, share money, and come back. You can't be eating on collection of money like a taker, and you perform. You must generate your money so that people will know that when you generate, you use it for the good of your people. So, like I said, decentralization, that's the word that I'm trusting God that they could have the political will to make happen.
Well, Dr. Taiwo Joe, we have to thank you for your thoughts. You are a leadership consultant and an analyst. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us this beautiful Wednesday morning. Just to also mention some of the things that he said earlier about, he said not talking restructuring, decentralization, that only recently the president signed into law the approval for states to be able to take part in railway, power generation, etc. It was a constitutional amendment that recently was signed into law by the president. So let us hope that those who are coming in on the saddle will take advantage of these new provisions in the Constitution, especially items that have been removed from the exclusive list and now put on the concurrent, and, you know, hopefully bring developments to the lives of their people. Just before we go, we have some feedback from our viewers. We have this first one from Shom Ayubadang, talking about the 10th National Assembly. He says, our elected leaders at the National Assembly should know we are a diverse country, so rotation should be in place for the positions in the Assembly for peace and progress, and also not to throw away merit and competence.
And then there's this tweet from Professor Imonoka Enakina. He says, to assuage concerns about ethnocentrism, religion, and competency or capabilities, the National Assembly must aptly be guided so that no region or religion will feel shortchanged in the 10th Assembly. The healing process from the outcome of the 2023 national elections must start from the NASS selection of their leadership positions.
One is from Festus Akimboyewa. He says, our country has never been so divided, and to bring calm to our country, incoming 10th NASS members must put premium on national interests and not personal interests when electing their leaders. This is what will be good for Nigeria and all Nigerians. Self-interested politicians must not do anything that will divide us further. Well, we do thank you for your mails. We thank you for your tweets. Keep them coming. And thank you for sharing your morning with us. I am Bukola Koka.
Thank you for watching. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf.
And I'm Neota Egbe. Have yourself a beautiful day.